The Kalispel Tribe does not have a treaty. We are an executive order tribe created in 1914. There are treaty tribes that allow for off-reservation hunting and fishing at usual and accustomed places and open and unclaimed lands. Unfortunately, the Kalispel Tribe does not have a treaty in that regard. That does not, at least right now, allow for off-reservation hunting and fishing. On the Pend Oreille River here, it's one of the most highly impacted rivers in the Columbia River Basin. We have 6 dams in the area of the tribe's aboriginal territory or ceded lands. Our reservoir here, the river right in front of the reservation, basically gets so warm that it doesn't support life of native fish. Warm water fish species like largemouth bass, smallmouth, perch, all of those types of things. Northern pike more recently are abundant in the reservoir. But if you're looking to catch a bull trout or if you're looking to catch a West Slope cutthroat, you're not going to find any. They don't utilize the reservoir because it's so warm and its habitat is all messed up. This salmon comes from the Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery, and these are surplus fish that come back to that particular hatchery, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service allows the Kalispel Tribe, amongst a handful of other tribes, to take part in harvesting those surplus salmon that they don't need to create the next year's fry. I think it took a little bit of knowledge from both the tribe and from the Fish and Wildlife Service to make the connections to each other, that this was even an opportunity for us. Also, the Colville tribes have been a very active player in salmon recovery in the Upper Columbia. Below Grand Coulee, they're developing an enormous fish hatchery that they've also invited tribes of the Upper Columbia area to help them fish on those fish when they come back. And so basically, it's kind of a restoration of not only a fish run, but also of cultural practices of sharing amongst the Plateau Indian tribes. So it's a really positive thing. So the salmon that we get now is to be distributed to tribal members, both in the city of Spokane and the community residents on the Kalispel Indian Reservation. And so the process that we're going through, as you saw, is in the front of the boat barn, we're gutting whole fish to be distributed to the community. We're generally, right on the first day, we're given a couple fish per person. We had a delivery of 515 yesterday, so we're going to be distributing 2 or so to people. The back part of the boat barn, we're filleting and vacuum sealing and then freezing so we don't have a lot of waste. And we're also distributing those to elders. And there'll be a store of them in these freezers throughout the balance of the summer and into fall. One thing that's very, very important is that the Kalispel people are salmon people. They've always been salmon people. They just haven't had access to salmon for the last 70 years. So that's why this is such an incredible gift to the tribe, that they get to partake in those salmon. They lost all of those fish in the 30s and 40s because of the Grand Coulee. The hatcheries that were created below Grand Coulee to mitigate for the losses of the fish above, the Kalispel Tribe never has an opportunity to fish on. So all the mitigation occurred below, where there are fish ladders, etc. So we haven't had the opportunity as a tribal organization to fish on those until relatively recently. We have been participating in this for at least the last 3 or 4 years. It's gotten to be a much more significant program this year. There were never salmon right here. They didn't make it up here. There are barriers below naturally that prohibited salmon from coming up. The closest place that we had salmon was probably about 70 miles north of here, at the confluence of the Salmo and Pend Oreille rivers, and also at the Little Falls fishery, amongst some other places on the Spokane and Columbia rivers. So that's where the tribe went to fish for salmon, and also, like I said, at Kettle Falls. Prior to any Euro-American contact, prior to any disease, anything that was introduced by Euro-Americans, there were approximately 4,000 Kalispel people, okay, 4,000 people. It's estimated that they put away 3 pounds of salmon per person per day for 4,000 people. You do the math. That's a lot of fish. That's a lot of fish. That's 1,000 pounds. That's a half a ton of salmon per person for the year. What we need to do here is kind of remember the cultural connections between the people and salmon, kind of remember how we prepared it, how we cooked it, how the tribe stores it. You know, we can't be sitting there thinking about that we have to eat it all right now because we're going to get sick of it. So it's kind of remembering all of those different cultural activities associated with it. You know, food preparation, how you clean. What are the names of these fish in Kalispel? What's the anatomical parts? What are they called? So there's a lot of stuff that we can develop cultural programs with the culture department, do trainings on how we can gut, clean, fillet, prepare, smoke, dry, you name it, can. There's all sorts of things that the community is going to come together around this resource. Because we're going to be, for the foreseeable future, receiving 4 or 5, maybe even more deliveries of several hundred fish at a time. I mean, that's a lot of salmon, so it's very important to incorporate this back into everybody's daily or if not weekly diet.